Hiccup's kind-heartedness and generosity make him one of the most beloved protagonists in all of animation, but what if he took a different path instead of being the dragon rider we all know and love? In today's video, we'll take a look at what would happen if Hiccup's personality took a different trajectory and he became an antagonist like Grimmel. Now, the reason this theory works is that Grimmel is actually supposed to be an antithesis to Hiccup. Even though they both had similar beginnings, Hiccup chose the path of compassion, while Grimmel chose cruelty and power. But before we dive into our dark timeline, we need to understand exactly who Grimmel the Grizzly is, and why he represents such a perfect dark mirror to Hiccup. Grimmel was the main antagonist of How to Train Your Dragon, The Hidden World, and honestly, he's one of the most chilling villains in the entire franchise. But here's what makes him so terrifying. He's not just some mindless brute. He's intelligent, strategic, and worst of all, he was once just a regular kid. The parallels between Grimmel and Hiccup began during their childhood. When Grimmel was just a young boy growing up on the continent, he encountered a sleeping night fury similar to how Hiccup encountered Toothless. The difference? When Grimmel encountered the dragon, he chose violence over mercy and killed the dragon to take it as a trophy. The village hailed Grimmel as a hero and praised him for his strength and bravery. That praise and recognition became like a drug for Grimmel and shaped his entire personality as a brutal dragon hunter. What followed was a systematic hunting mission as Grimmel specifically targeted night furies, the rarest and most intelligent of all dragon species. He used his cunning, his intelligence, and his understanding of dragon behavior to hunt them down one by one. By the time we meet him in the Hidden World, Grimmel has successfully driven night furies to near extinction, and Toothless appears to be the last of his species. What made Grimmel so effective was his unique combination of intelligence and ruthlessness. He chose Death Grippers, one of the most lethal dragon species, as his weapons, and enslaved them by using their own venom. While the concept of training dragons to hunt other dragons is already cruel, Grimmel was also a master manipulator who understood psychology and how to use it against both dragons and humans. He would attract the already solitary night furies by presenting them with potential mates, toying with their emotions before trapping and executing them. While the cruelty sets them apart, the level of ingenuity and emotional intelligence shown by Grimmel seems grimly familiar. This is exactly the kind of strategic thinking Hiccup shows throughout the series, just directed towards destruction rather than cohesion. And that brings us to Hiccup's early life, and what's really interesting is that the foundation for a villain origin story like Grimmel's is handed right to us. Let's be real about Hiccup's childhood. It was brutal. He was the chief's son, but lacked the strength, athleticism, and combat talent to be an accomplished dragon hunter like his father. But most importantly, Hiccup didn't have the ambition and drive to take on a dragon with his bare hands or lead the tribe on an expedition. As a teenager, Hiccup was overshadowed by the others' skills and ignored by Astrid. The other teens, including his own cousin, Snotlout, bullied him constantly. His only friends were the other eccentric outcasts, Fishlegs and Gobber the Belch. Even though Stoic loved and cared for his son, that disappointment was always there, and Hiccup was painfully aware of it. In our timeline, Hiccup's encounter with Toothless changed everything, but what if it'd gone differently? Picture this. Hiccup shoots down the Night Fury, just like in the original story, but when he finds Toothless tangled and helpless, instead of freeing him, a different thought crosses his mind. This is my chance. This is how I prove them all wrong. In this dark timeline, Hiccup plunges his knife deep into the dragon's heart and kills Toothless. He isn't motivated by bloodlust, but out of a desperate need for acceptance. Hiccup alerts the village of his feat, and suddenly, he's a hero. The disappointment in his father's eyes transforms into pride. The kids who bullied Hiccup now look at him with respect, and Astrid finally notices him and views him as an equal. Just like with Grimmel, that taste of recognition becomes addictive. But here's what makes our villain Hiccup become truly terrifying. He doesn't just kill dragons, he's too smart for that. After killing Toothless, Hiccup studies the body obsessively, learning about the dragon's anatomy and their possible weaknesses. Just because he started killing dragons, that doesn't mean Hiccup would act like the other Vikings. His approach is more scientific, and he aims to take down dragons using technology instead of brute force. Hiccup uses weapons like the bolo launcher he shot Toothless with to capture and study various dragon species. While others study the dragon manuals, he updates it with each dragon's weaknesses and strategies to take them down. Originally, Hiccup's incredible talent for invention was used to create his flame sword or a prosthetic tail fin for Toothless, But in this timeline, those skills get turned towards creating increasingly sophisticated dragon traps. Thanks to his reputation as the Night Fury Slayer, Hiccup gets to reject the traditional training with weapons like axes and spears in favor of developing his own mechanical contraptions. But the point where Hiccup becomes truly monstrous is when he starts experimenting with ways to control dragons mentally. Hiccup discovers that raising dragons from the time they're born makes them bond with humans and treat the Vikings like their masters. But additionally, he also works out how to tame adult dragons using force and intimidation. Either way, Hiccup builds an army of enslaved dragons, creatures that once soared free, now forced to serve their greatest enemy. So what does the How to Train Your Dragon story look like with Hiccup as an antagonist instead of the protagonist? Initially, everything seems perfect. As Hiccup becomes Berk's greatest dragon killer, he's obsessed with dragons, not with protecting them, but with controlling them. He sees dragons as an ultimate tool for power, and power, once tasted, is never enough. Now, initially, the Red Death prevents Hiccup's ambitions from extending beyond Berk, as he has to deal with the constant dragon raids. This results in him leading an expedition to the Red Death's nest, basically replicating the same mission that Stoic once embarked on and failed at. Without Toothless, the battle looks starkly different, as Hiccup is forced to try and overwhelm the massive dragon with brute force, as opposed to targeted plasma strikes. But even though there are casualties, Hiccup is able to successfully coordinate his army of dragons to take down the Red Death, cementing his position as not only a warrior, but a conqueror as well. Now that Hiccup has surpassed his own father in terms of feats, he realizes that Berk itself is holding him back. He becomes ambitious and dreams of spreading his influence further using his mastery over the dragons. After all, the village of Berk once rejected him and only accepted him after he proved he could kill. Did they really deserve his absolute loyalty? So, Hiccup goes above his father's authority and begins venturing further with his dragons, seeking new opportunities beyond the archipelago. It's at this point in the story where we meet the second major antagonist of the movies, Drago Bloodfist. In this timeline, Hiccup never meets Valka, and that's probably for the better given his new immoral tendencies. However, Drago still kills Valka's Bewilderbeast and takes the power of the Alpha into his own hands. Armed with the most powerful dragon in the world, Drago immediately takes control of Berk and all its dragons. When Hiccup returns, he's forced to surrender to Drago's forces since he knows he's outmatched. But in this timeline, Hiccup has no intention of liberating the dragons captured by the warlord, so he doesn't actually need to treat Drago as an enemy. Hiccup negotiates with Drago, offering to share his expertise in taming dragons in exchange for a position among Drago's ranks as a high-ranking lieutenant. Now, Drago has no reason to reject this proposition since he's in search of new talent and Hiccup fits the bill pretty perfectly. However, Hiccup has a deeper plan beneath his seemingly friendly exterior. The only thing stopping him from overthrowing Drago is the warlord's Bewilderbeast, but that could be the exact tool that Hiccup could use to his advantage. Hiccup realizes that the Bewilderbeast was conditioned into fearing Drago, and with the right approach, he could turn the dragon against its master. Now, I won't get into specifics here, but Hiccup successfully manages to coax the Bewilderbeast into asserting its dominance over Drago and freeing itself from his control. With the Bewilderbeast returning to the wild and Hiccup regaining control of his dragon army, the balance of power in the Viking world seems to have flipped on its head. This time, the showdown is pretty one-sided, and Hiccup manages to overthrow Drago and claim a seat at the head of the warlords. As Stoic steps down to hand authority over to his son, he sees what Hiccup has become and wonders if he could have done anything differently to save his son. Now, you might be wondering what would have happened if Hiccup runs into Grimmel, but chances are that the two never even cross paths. You see, Grimmel came all the way to the archipelago to hunt Toothless, so if he's not alive, Grimmel would have no reason to shift his operations to Hiccup's homeland. He would probably admire Hiccup from afar as a fellow dragon hunter, but ultimately the two would never develop the rivalry that we saw in the movies. So, what does the future hold for Hiccup? Well, unless a new protagonist emerges to liberate the dragons, he'll have a pretty successful reign as a dragon-slaying Viking. Chances are, Hiccup would still end up being a legend, just not in the same way we remember him. But what do you think? Would this version of the story have been more interesting? Or are you glad we got the timeline where Hiccup rejected the darker path? Let us know in the comments below. See ya! Bye!